Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Om Jnana Tiramandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunanitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Sunivadi Paschata Deshatarine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Krishna Das Goswami Niti Namine Namo Hamsa Nikashaya Prabhupada Priyayate Sudrida Sudhi Nistyam Vyanta Shavakinu Vadine Hare Krishna. So last week we were talking about, we're in the section of talks between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy. And we left off last week at text 62, which was kind of a little bit of a summation or a discussion they were having about occupational duties, varnashram dharma, and all of the concepts having to do with everyone doing those duties in order to realize their position as a servant of Lord Sri Krishna. So today we'll continue, and this is text 63. And I'm just going to read, again, translations and purports, since we've sort of decided that reading the Bengali was too much. Oh, you like that? Okay. I don't think so, but everybody was sort of... Okay. Okay, so we'll read everything. Text 63. Sarva dharman parityadya mamekam saranam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma sucha. As stated in Scripture, Bhagavad Gita 18:66, after giving up all kinds of religious and occupational duties, if you come to me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and take shelter, I will give you protection from all of life's sinful reactions. Do not worry. Purport. In this connection, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami instructs in his book Manashiksha, Chapter 2, Na dharmam shruti gana niruktam kilakuru brajarada krishna prachura paricharyami hatanu. He has thus enjoined that we should not perform religious or irreligious activities as prescribed in the Vedas. The best course is to engage always in the service of Lord Krishna and Radharani. That is the perfection of everything in this life. Similarly, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, Text 46, it is said by Narada Muni, Yada yashanugrihanati bhagavan atma bhavita sajahati matim loke vedecha parinishtitam. When one actually takes to the loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he gives up all duties in the material world, as well as all duties prescribed by the Vedic literatures. In this way, one is fixed in the service of the Lord. So Ramananda Roy is just driving this point home that once we take to the devotional service of the Lord, all of the designations that we previously held in that sort of Varnashram Dharma construct, because Varnashram Dharma is really meant to have everybody come to the point where they can, as they're doing their duty, they're sort of, according to their psychophysical nature, they're doing their duties, then they can actually start to understand the absolute truth. Because only when you're stable and situated nicely and doing what you're supposed to do, can you actually begin to get to the point of some level of self-realization. So this is the sort of the summation of that in Manashiksha and also in Srimad Bhagavatam, at some point those designations are irrelevant, because when one takes to the service of the Lord, he just does the needful, whatever the needful is, regardless of what dharma or ashram, what he thinks he's supposed to be doing. Of course, that's also under the direction of the spiritual master. So those things are hand in hand. Prabhu kahe eho baya age kahara raya kaihat gyana mishra bhakti sadhya shara. After hearing Ramananda Roy speak in this way, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again rejected his statement and said, "Go ahead and say something more." Ramananda Roy then replied, "Devotional service mixed with empiric knowledge is the essence of perfection." Devotional service mixed with non-Vedic speculative knowledge is certainly not pure devotional service. Therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in his Anubhashya preaches that self-realization following the execution of ritualistic ceremonies is in the neutral stage between liberation and conditioned life. It is a place beyond this material world, in the river Viraja, where the three modes of material nature are subdued or neutralized in the unmanifest stage. However, the spiritual world is a manifestation of spiritual energy and is known as Vaikuntha Loka, the place where there is no anxiety. The material world, known as Brahmanda, is the creation of the external energy. Between the two creations, the material creation and the spiritual creation, is a river known as Viraja, as well as a place known as Brahma Loka. Viraja Nadi and Brahma Loka are shelters for living entities disgusted with material life and inclined to impersonal existence by way of denying material variegatedness. Since these places are not situated in the Vaikuntha Lokas, or the spiritual world, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu proclaims them to be external. In the Brahma Loka and Viraja Nadi, one cannot conceive of the Vaikuntha Lokas. Brahma Loka and Viraja Nadi are also attained after difficult austerities, but in these realms there is no understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his transcendental loving service. Without such spiritual knowledge, simple detachment from material conditions is but another side of material existence. From the spiritual point of view, it is all external. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rejected this proposal, Ramananda Roy suggested that devotional service based on philosophy and logic is a more advanced position. He therefore quoted the verse from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 54. So, as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is taking Ramananda Roy a little bit higher and past what we would, or what Prabhupada actually has said again and again, is more of a the material energies, or more of a mundane conception of where we're at. It's stated here that, Ramananda Roy states devotional service mixed with empiric knowledge is the essence of perfection. And we hear that, service and knowledge leads to realization. And that's actually a principle of, a main principle, I would say, of why many of us engage in devotional service and also are reading. It's two tracks of the Bhakti Yoga train is Pancharatrika Vidi and Bhagavat Vidi. Thank you. And we need both of those tracks to move forward in devotional service. So when we're engaging in devotional service, which includes chanting, and we have the scriptural knowledge that we need to sort of understand, it's kind of by osmosis. We start understanding a lot of, deeply understanding a lot of what we're sort of reading or what we're told, if we're hearing, then that's actually in a little bit better platform. And this is also talking about, Prabhupada also talks here about when, and we heard it this week, we hear it a lot, the impersonal conceptions, when the people think, everything's one, we're all God, and there's not really any variegatedness, but they're still disgusted with the material creation, then that's when they're kind of destined to go into that formless, tasteless sort of oneness that we hear a lot about, and that's in the Brahma Loka, or the Brahma Jyoti. And, that's not something we as devotees really strive for. We don't relish that because it's kind of dull. And not only that, we'll have to actually resume our devotional service at some point because that's not the absolute truth. So Ramananda Roy is sort of moving up very, very slowly with Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he's sort of fleshing out everything that the reader, us, or anybody that's listening would need to know to dispel any doubts, or if we have any inclination a certain way apart from Bhakti Yoga, that would be sort of eradicated. So text 65. Brahmabhuta prasanatma na sochati na kanchati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. We just heard this verse this week. Srila Gurudev was talking about it. Ramananda Roy continued, according to the Bhagavad Gita, one who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So that's from the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna is telling that to Arjuna. Purport in this verse for the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that a person who accepts the theory of monism, being always engaged in empiric philosophical discussions about spiritual life, becomes joyful and is relieved from all material lamentation and hankering. At that stage, one is equipoised. He sees all living entities as spiritual beings. After attaining this elevated stage, one can attain pure devotional service. The conclusion is that devotional service, mixed with ritualistic fruitive activity, is inferior to spiritual service based on empiric philosophical discussion. And that's also was discussed this week, Niyam Agraha, where you're doing things in because you're supposed to in devotional service, and it's very ritualistic, and you're not really, the intention is just to sort of do the ritual because it should be done, or it's part of the process. It's not really something that you're taking in. You're not sort of, you're not feeling it so much, And also, when you're not feeling it so much, you don't really reap the same kind of benefit from that devotional service. So when one comes to the point of not doing things ritualistically, actually doing things from the heart, because they love Krishna, they want to please Krishna like that, then that's actually a much higher platform of devotional service than just, anybody can come and do some service and go away. But if you really have a taste and you want to do more, and it's actually a much more reciprocal relationship between one and the Lord if that kind of devotional service is being executed with love and devotion. Text 66. Prabhu kahe ho baya age kahara raya kaha jnana suna bhakti sadhya shara. After hearing this, the Lord, as usual, rejected it, considering it to be external devotional service. He again asked Ramananda Roy to speak further, and Ramananda Roy replied, "Pure devotional service without any touch of speculative knowledge is the essence of perfection." Purport. In his Anubhashya commentary, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that this stage, devotional service mixed with speculative knowledge, is also external and not within the jurisdiction of pure devotional service as practiced in Vaikuntha Loka. As soon as there is some conception of materialistic thought, be it positive or negative, the service is not spiritual. It may be free from material contamination, but because there is mental speculation, the devotional service is not pure and freed from the contamination of material life. A living entity who wants to be completely pure must be above this material conception. The negation of material existence does not necessarily mean spiritual existence. I'll read that again. The negation of material existence does not necessarily mean spiritual existence. After material existence is negated, spiritual existence, namely Sat Chit Ananda, still may not be manifested. Until one comes to the stage of actually understanding one's eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord, he cannot enter into spiritual life. Spiritual life means becoming detached from material life and engaging in the loving service of the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore asked Ramananda Roy to explain something transcendental to devotional service mixed with speculative knowledge. A pure devotee is completely surrendered to the lotus feet of the Lord, and only by his love does he conquer Krishna, who cannot be conquered by anyone. Krishna always stands victorious over everything. No one can conquer him. One can attain the stage of pure devotion simply by fully surrendering. This is next corroborated by Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 14, Text 3, wherein Lord Brahma, defeated by the potency of Sri Krishna, fully surrendered unto the Lord. That's devotional service from the heart in a nutshell. No speculative knowledge, no thinking that you're going to receive any reward, or no motivation to do anything to, as was being talked about this week, as some people like to worship Lord Shiva for some benediction, and Lord Shiva is very easily pleased, and he's also very easily angered, so that can backfire. But a lot of times that sort of devotion means like you're devoted, you're wholly trying to maybe, I don't know, it feels like possessing of something to, there's some gain there, unless it's something in actual devotional service to Krishna. There may be some material gain, or there may be some, emotional or physical or some other kind of gain, unless you're actually surrendered and you're wanting to just be a pure devotee or pure servant of the Lord, pure, without any speculation, without any motivation, 100%. So this is the verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Jnane prayasham udapasya namanta eva jivanti shanmukaritam bhavadiyavartam stane stita shruti gatam tanuvam manovir ye prayasho jita jitopya sitai stridokyam. Ramananda Roy continued, Lord Brahma said, "My dear Lord, those devotees who have thrown away the impersonal conception of the absolute truth and have therefore abandoned discussing empiric philosophical truths should hear from self-realized devotees about your holy name, form, pastimes, and qualities. They should completely follow the principles of devotional service and remain free from illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and animal slaughter. Surrendering themselves fully with body, words, and mind, they can live in any ashram or social status. Indeed, you are conquered by such persons, although you are always unconquerable. So Lord Brahma is reading this very beautiful verse, or talking to Lord Sri Krishna. And this is such a, everything, this is Bhakti Yoga in a nutshell. Abandoning any impersonal conceptions, abandoning any empiric speculation about Krishna, and abstaining from, actually following the four principles of freedom, it's called, and also hearing about the holy name, the form, the pastime, and the qualities of Sri Krishna from self-realized devotees, from pure devotees, from senior devotees like that, and from the scriptures, and from obviously Srila Prabhupada. So this is actually Bhakti Yoga in one verse. This is condensed. And it's quite beautiful because at the end, Lord Brahma is talking about being, those who follow this are actually able to conquer Krishna. You know, Krishna is conquered by such persons who are following very strictly. And we can practically understand that as we go through our Bhakti Yoga practice on a regular basis, especially those of us who, not really me, but there's some in the room that have been doing it for quite a few years. And I'm sure that they feel the reciprocation of Krishna on a regular basis as they follow all of these sort of tenets and just surrender completely to whatever Krishna wants, you know, the will of the Lord. So that's the conclusion that Ramananda Roy has finally brought forth to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Seemingly, then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Prabhu kahe ho haya age kahara, rai kahe prema bhakti sarva sadhya shara. At this point, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, this is all right, but still you can speak more on the subject. Ramananda Roy then replied, ecstatic love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the essence of all perfection. Purport. In his Amrita Pravaha Bhashya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur summarizes the conversation up to this point, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says to Ramananda Roy, Eho hayage kahara. This is the process accepted in devotional service, but there is something more than this. Therefore, please explain what is beyond. Simply executing the duties of all varnas and ashrams is not as good as offering all the results of one's activities to the Lord. When one gives up all fruitive activity and fully surrenders to the Lord, he attains sva dharma tyaga, wherein he abandons the social order and takes to the renounced order. That is certainly better. However, better than the renounced order is cultivation of knowledge mixed with devotional service. Yet, all these activities are external to the activities of the spiritual world. There is no touch of pure devotional service in them. Pure devotional service cannot be attained by empiric philosophy, nor can perfection be attained simply by good association. Devotional service by self-realization is a different subject matter. It is untouched by fruitive activity, for one surrenders the results of activities to the Lord, abandons prescribed duties, and accepts the renounced order of life. Such devotional service is situated on a higher platform than that of empiric philosophical speculation with a mixture of bhakti. This is verified by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Chapter text 1, chapter 1, text 11. Anya bilashita sunyam dhyana karma dhyanavritam anukulenya Krishnayu shilanam bhaktiruttama. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. Devotional activities, however, sometimes appear to be impure in the neophyte stage, but in the mature stage, they are completely pure or free from material activity. Therefore, Ramananda Roy replied after hearing the last statement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prema Bhakti Sarva Sadhya Shara. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually accepted this verse, Jnane Prayasham, as the basic principle of perfection. One has to practice this principle in order to make further progress. When further progress is actually made, one comes to the platform of ecstatic loving service to the Lord. This first stage is technically called sadhana bhakti, or devotional service in practice. The result of sadhana bhakti must be ecstatic love, attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is also called prema bhakti. In the neophyte stage, sadhana bhakti includes faith, associating with devotees, and practicing devotional service. Thus, one is freed from all unwanted things. One then becomes fixed in devotional service and increases his desire to act in devotional service. Thus, one becomes attached to the Lord and to his devotional service. So, this is quite an unpacking from Srila Prabhupada. And it's actually, I love how Srila Prabhupada is actually, he's the translations the talks between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy are going on. And Prabhupada is the one that actually unpacks it all for us. Obviously he's a pure devotee, but he's so in touch with how to unpack it for us, for us in this material world who are very covered and, we're averse quite a lot of times to devotional service to Krishna. And many of us weren't brought up in this wonderful way of thinking about Krishna and the world and dovetailing all of our activities into the service of the Lord. So it's a constant struggle, and that's why we're on the Sadhana Bhakti platform. We're practicing each day, we're chanting our rounds, we're